Believe me, if you demo something to a group of execs, okay, it's working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Put it in every store. And, I need 6 months and I need this big check. That's going to blow you up right there. But if you sweep it under the rug and, the project that will not be named and we'll never talk about that again. Not only did you fail, you failed twice because you failed to learn from the mistakes. Right. Part of it actually comes down to understanding the cost model. I try to start every meeting I go to, either out loud or in my head, is what problem are we trying to solve? What are we trying to solve? What is the problem? And is the problem like the basket size or the AOV or conversion? But if the problem is we don't have enough AI in our company or we haven't done anything cool, now you got a problem, right? But to me, innovation is a little bit more straightforward and simple. It's just doing something in a unique and different way to serve a customer. Like, we shouldn't just innovate for innovation's sake.
Welcome to Blade to Greatness, the podcast where retail leaders sharpen their edge one essential skill at a time as we uncover the essential traits every retail leader needs to thrive. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
And I'm Casey Golden. Each episode, we're joined by a guest who brings one important leadership skill into razor sharp focus. And today, we're tackling a challenge every retail exec faces. How do you take innovation from a cool pilot to a company-wide win?
Our guest, Andy Laudato, COO of The Vitamin Shoppe, has a playbook for that. He's seen what works and what doesn't when it comes to scaling innovation across stores, systems, and teams.
We talk about avoiding innovation theater, why testing in your toughest stores is smarter than showing off in flagships, and how to enable innovation into your core strategy rather than a test lab.
Yeah, if you're ready to move from experiments to enterprise impact, this is the episode for you. Now, before we dive in with Andy, let me tell you about our amazing sponsor of the Retail Razor Podcast Network, Retail Club. Join 2,000 retail leaders at the Retail Club AI Festival, September 22nd to 24th in Huntington Beach. Dive deep into how AI is reshaping retail while soaking up the sun at a fully outdoor beachside venue. That's right, it's on the beach. Decision makers from retailers and brands can attend with free tickets and up to $1,250 in travel reimbursement. Head to retailclub.com/retail-razor-podcast to learn more and get your ticket today. Thank you, Retail Club, for helping us bring you this podcast and all the shows in the Retail Razor Podcast Network.
Time's a ticking. We also have a quick ask for you. If you enjoyed the show, please hit us with a 5-star rating and drop a short review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you're listening. And don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. It really helps us grow the show. And please check out the other shows in the Retail Razor Podcast Network, the Retail Razor Show, Retail Transformers, and Data Blades. You can find them in your favorite podcast player or visit our YouTube channel to find them all.
Now let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Andy Laudato.
Andy, it's so great to welcome you back to the Blade to Greatness podcast.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you, Casey.
So Andy, today we are excited to have you back and talk with us about a critical skill retail leaders really need to master, and that's how to scale innovation from pilot to enterprise. In your book, Foster Innovation, you also talk about blending pragmatism and boldness and encouraging leaders to take risks, but you have to have guardrails, right, to protect brand consistency, customer experience. So tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, let's start talking about defining what innovation even means, right? So I think a lot of us just think of innovation as the newest, latest technology, or nowadays it would be all about AI. But to me, innovation is a little bit more straightforward and simple. It's just doing something in a unique and different way to serve a customer. And it could be a process, it just could be that. A lot of times it is tech, but understanding exactly what innovation is super important, and understanding why you're doing it. Like, we shouldn't just innovate for innovation's sake. Like, we want to be cool. We want to be, win an award or be top retail expert or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So doing something unique and different for a customer needs to be the starting point. Where I work at the Vitamin Shoppe, innovation is in ingredients, or maybe it's in a form. So it's about creatine in gummies or liposomals, which are dissolved in fat. And so they're more absorbed by the body. So there's technical innovation on product, which is really exciting for us. And it's a big part of who we are. On the tech side, it's just always about implementing some new tech, but not for the sake of the tech, for the business. So I always say, don't try to solve a tech problem with business. And a lot of times they show up either at a show or a conference and like, here's some tech. How could you use this? And it's backwards, right? You need to start with, hey, we want to make it easier for our customers to shop, or easier for them to discover product, or easier for them to learn what's important for their health. So how could we do that? Is it with an app? Is it with a beacon? Is it with this or that? But start with the need. I think you look back in history and they're like people that have, like the Netherlands has a lot of, is it the Netherlands? It has all these dams and all these different places. It's necessity drives invention, I think. It's the same. So that shouldn't go away. Invention shouldn't drive necessity. Like, I don't need this if I don't need it. All right. So I think once we frame that, then how do we do it? And we've talked about it before. Every time you hear me talk about it, it's about making sure you have a firm foundation, that, you know, your systems are in order and your things are running well and everybody's there and your budgets are under control. So really having that foundation to innovate from is key. And then making sure that people have psychological safety. You hear the startup people say, fail fast, fail fast. There's a joke, fail fast, but not always. So when you think about some of these stats, like 1 in 5 work, or 1 in 10, or 1 in 20, every time I say something like only 1 in 10 work, people are like, oh, it's way worse than that, you know? And even what was that, 90% or 95% of AI projects are failing, right? So so you can't have a place where if somebody fails when they're trying to innovate, they're going to lose their job or not get promoted or things like that. So I always say that rewarding failure is easy to say, but hard to do.
Really hard to do.
Yeah, I just blew money or invested it, or I wasted some time, or you get some hype. But really creating a culture where people feel safe to do those things. Now, here's how I do it. We all know how much education's worth, especially if you have children. You've written big checks for colleges, you know how much education costs. And we've all spent a lot of money on our own school and college and learning books and classes. So if you do something that doesn't work and you're willing to sit down and openly learn from it, then that time and effort and energy wasn't wasted. But if you sweep it under the rug and, you know, the project that will not be named and we'll never talk about that again, not only did you fail, you failed twice because you failed to learn from the mistakes. So a term we use from Agile is retrospective, where you sit down after a project and really talk through with the team. What went well, what went wrong? Why did we miss this? That makes it all worth it. Now you've written checks for learning, and now you have that knowledge, and the whole team does. And doing things like that, where you're openly talking about it and learning from it, that does drive the psychological safety. Because now the people on the team are like, okay, I'm not embarrassed that I was on that. We talked about it openly. We understood.
We've learned something.
And what does that knowledge do? The next time you want to take on something like that, either you'll know better, like don't touch the hot stove, or oh, here's the better way to do it. Either way, it will be much better chance of succeeding. So I think that's super important. And then the other thing is, I don't think it's a good idea to separate people and go, you're going to be the innovation people and you're going to be the day-to-day teams. This is an org structure thing. I think you're better off having innovation be part of everybody's job.
Yeah.
Because the people closest to the work aren't going to know best how to do something better, different, more interesting. So it's another thing that I try to think about.
And sometimes that's like the fun part for a lot of people, or the place where you can have like a brain break, right? And you get to kind of go into this other realm and have permission to spend time on it during the day or during the month or quarter. But I definitely have seen where it is very separated on who's allowed to be part of the innovation conversations and who's not. It can be very discouraging and pull it apart even more. I feel like you almost don't want them to be successful in some ways because you don't get to play in the fun part.
No, that's super well said. It's very accurate of what you see going on. The other thing that really is exciting is this idea of vibe coding. Vibe coding is using AI to write code. And so now it's making it a lot more accessible for people to do prototyping or to build something. We build something pretty quickly that way to demo. And because it's not a lot of time and a lot of cost, we can allow people to go work on this and free up some time and say, yeah, why don't you go play with that? And if it doesn't work out. So we built a customer-facing touchscreen with product content, blog articles, AI search. It reuses all the services from vitaminshoppe.com, and it's going to be up in our flagship store, a new store in Manhattan, and it was done internally with a lot of vibe coding and a lot of reuse, and really, really fun and really, really neat. And to me, it just defines innovation.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of composable commerce, and I always talk about having a big box of Legos. And when we built all that, we're like, we'll be able to build something in the future that we haven't defined yet. And now we've done it. We built basically a new UI into existing services, and really, really exciting. So the combination of the trust, the time, the people, having everything in the right order, and then letting someone go play with some new tools and embracing those, it worked. So it's in the 5% that did work for us.
Oh, there you go. So one of the areas I see a lot of retailers struggle with is once they have that great project and they've proven it and made it work, is scaling it across the whole enterprise, right? So you can do something at one location, like a flagship, you can take it to 10 locations, but then what do you do when you have to take it to 500 or 1,000 and really scale it out? Because that seems to be, I always find an area where a lot of projects do fail is when they get to that scalability point. How do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of it actually comes down to understanding the cost model. So let me make up some numbers, right? Say it costs you $20K to build something and you put it in one store. Everyone can find $20K, but then it's like, if it's $20K for 1,000 stores, what's that, Matt? $20 million, right? Nobody can find that.
Right. That's not the same thing.
So understanding that before I take something on, is it going to scale financially? There are a few things that are just so expensive and you can afford to try them, but don't afford to try it if you can't afford to buy it. And many times if I'm working with a third party, like a startup, I have those discussions before we begin. If this works, what will you charge me to roll it out? And they don't want to have the conversation, right? Because, and again, I don't mind spending a disproportionate amount for the first one, but it needs to be able to scale. So that's important. And then there's a little balance with the tech stack. You could do rapid prototyping and get something that just won't scale technically.
Right.
So either you got to think through that and at least figure out what it's going to cost to build it the right way, or just put time into your project that you're going to have to go back and refactor it. So understanding if you need to scale it technically, understanding what that's going to take in cost and time and money. And then have you considered all the considerations? Have you considered security? And the thing I mentioned, the ADA is going to be accessible, and can somebody that visually impaired, all those things going to be there, and it's going to have closed caption. And so all these things you need to scale. I could put something up in a pilot and not consider everything. Well, you have to consider security because someone could hack one thing as much as 1,000. But some of the things you don't consider to do a pilot have to be considered. And the more of those you know about up front, the more clear you can be about it. Because believe me, if you demo something to a group of execs, okay, it's working. Okay, great. Put it in every store. And, I need 6 months and I need this big check. That's going to blow you up right there. So having clarity. There's always sticker shock. The earlier you talk about it, the easier it is to accept.
No, I agree. And I do feel like some things are, there's a place where you get what you pay for, and there's a place where there's literally no ROI. We can't figure out how it fits in the business to help us make money, but those projects, those pilots still happen, which I find very interesting. But there's no scale or rollout strategy attached to it. It was just for this one thing. And I'm finding that we went from having one of these flagship pilots with no definition of success or how it scales or goes through an all-door rollout. And it was just that one moment. And then none of these pilots continued. And I heard a rumor that you believe in bottom door testing for pilots versus flagships. And I'd love you to share why you think that is a more effective strategy than vice versa.
Yeah, I don't think I like that term bottom door, but we could talk about lower volume stores or
There you go.
Well, come
That
on,
sounds
we're
nicer.
all industry people. There's top doors, mid doors, bottom doors. They know who they are.
All our
They only
stores
got
are
6 SKUs.
But it's just about reducing the blast radius, right? So maybe you want to try something that's less visible. You can learn. Maybe you have a little more payroll available because the store's not as crowded. are not as hectic. There's not, maybe you don't want to be in the back door of your investors and your shareholders. So, in their neighborhood. But yeah, I think that there's a huge value of trying something off the beaten path and getting it right and learning. I mean, hey, let's use the New York example, right? They don't start on Broadway. They start off Broadway and get it right and get the acting. And then
Right.
the right analogy for this is we'll start off Broadway. And then when we're feeling really good about it, we can move it up to the main stage.
Okay.
And maybe you get a little more excitement too from this doors that feel a little bit less attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time we have like all store meetings or regional manager meetings and we talk about something, they're all super eager to volunteer to try things. And then I always give them this speech, might not work, it might break. Like who really wants to be first on the new POS? Everybody. They always do it until they can't ring somebody out. And or they're like, well, can I do this coupon or this discount? So, but yeah, everybody wants to be, but I think the lower volume off the beaten path stores are more eager and more excited sometimes to get some of that attention.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, one last thing I wanted to ask you about, because we've talked about how AI is just infusing everywhere and it's what everybody wants to talk about when it comes to innovation. But how do you avoid the trap of just innovation theater versus real innovation? You touched on it, how sometimes the innovation isn't the bright, shiny thing. It's not the super sexy thing that everybody wants to do. Sometimes it can be much more powerful in the opposite extreme.
I try to start every meeting I go to, either out loud or in my head, is what problem are we trying to solve? What are we trying to solve? What is the problem? And is the problem like basket size or the AOV or conversion? But if the problem is we don't have enough AI in our company, or we haven't done anything cool, now you got a problem, right? So back to what Casey said is you do these things, but why are you doing
Why
them?
are you doing
right?
it?
Why? So, and that's the start with why. But
Yeah.
I'm just really clear. What problem are we solving? And my next question then, is that measurable? Do we just want people to like us better, or we want to be seen as more hip? Or is it, if we had this, like a big pillar at the vitamin shop is expertise. People come to us to learn. So the tool we built is to bring some of that expertise and knowledge and product right to the hands of the consumer inside of a store. So we have a really clear mandate, a really clear mission, and a really clear problem, and we're solving it with that innovation. So, but yeah, if you're trying to shoehorn tech into your business because it's the latest, those are the ones that don't work.
Yeah, right. Well, Andy, this has been another incredible discussion, as always, packed with great takeaways that hopefully everybody has been taking notes and working to their own leadership approach. I want to thank you so much for bringing clarity to all these important topics on innovation that everybody needs to learn.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We look forward to having you back on the show and share even more. Thanks, Andy. Well, Ricardo, Andy, this is a wrap. Love this episode? Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Good Pods. And if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe before you go. I'm Casey Golden.
Follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram, and subscribe to our Substack for highlights and bonus content. For transcripts and guest info, visit retailrazor.com. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us on Blade to Greatness, part of the Retail Razor Podcast Network.
Until next time, stay sharp, lead boldly, and stay human. This is the Retail Razor Blade to Greatness.